There was a young girl, one who was full of dreams but unsure of her place in the world. She had a piano at home, an old upright that had seen better days. But to her, it was more than just a piece of furniture. It was her escape, her refuge from everything she felt she couldn't explain. From a very young age, she had loved music. It was like a secret language that spoke to her heart in ways words never could. Every day, after school, she would rush to her piano, her fingers brushing over the keys like they were old friends, each note offering comfort. She wasn't a child prodigy, but she had something others didn't: passion. It wasn't about fame or approval. It was simply about the joy of playing, of losing herself in the sound of the music, but as much as she loved playing, she struggled with self-doubt. Her hands would tremble when she played in front of others, and she often felt like her music wasn't as good as it should be. She didn't have the natural confidence that some of her peers seemed to have. She was painfully aware of every mistake, every missed note. Despite all the hours spent practicing, she never quite felt like she was enough. Her biggest dream was to one day perform for a real audience, maybe even a professional. It seemed impossible, but it didn't stop her from wishing. One day, an unexpected opportunity arrived. A famous pianist, known for his strict and unflinching standards, was holding a master class in a nearby city. The chance to play in front of him was rare, and those chosen for the class were usually very skilled musicians. It was a big deal. When she heard about the class, a mixture of excitement and fear filled her heart. She wanted to go, but the thought of playing for someone with such a reputation terrified her. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she embarrassed herself? But deep down, she knew that this was her moment. If she could just push through the fear, it could be her chance to grow, to finally prove to herself that she could do it. So, after much hesitation, she signed up. Days passed, and the moment of truth arrived. She packed her music, making sure everything was perfect. When she stepped into the building, her stomach twisted with nerves. There were other musicians there, some of them much older, and they all seemed so confident. The sounds of their rehearsals echoed in the hallways, and she couldn't help but feel out of place. When her turn finally came, she walked into the room, her heart pounding in her chest. The pianist, the one who had inspired both fear and respect in everyone who knew his name, sat at the front of the room, watching her with cold eyes. She sat at the piano, hands trembling, and began to play. The first few notes were shaky, but she pushed through, trying to focus. She had practiced this piece over and over again, yet it felt like she couldn't remember anything. Her fingers stumbled. She missed notes. The song she knew so well sounded off-key, wrong somehow. She could feel Professor Leonard's gaze on her, and every mistake made it harder to breathe. Her palms became sweaty, her heart raced, and the room felt smaller and smaller with each passing second. Then, suddenly, the music stopped. "Enough!" Professor Leonard's voice cut through the air like a knife. His tone wasn't angry, but it was firm, as if he'd seen enough. What was that? Her face flushed red. She had been so nervous, so focused on trying not to make a mistake, that she had completely lost herself in the music. She looked down at her hands, too embarrassed to meet his eyes. Her throat felt tight. The room was so quiet, she could hear the sound of her own heartbeat. "You're not playing with any feeling," Professor Leonard continued. "You're too stiff. It's like you're just going through the motions. You're so focused on not messing up that you're forgetting why you're playing in the first place. Music isn't about playing the right notes. It's about playing with your heart." The words cut deeper than she could have imagined. She had worked so hard, practiced for months, only to be told that her best wasn't good enough. The crowd in the room stirred, whispering to each other. Some of the older students rolled their eyes, as if they already knew what was coming. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to run out of the room, to forget this ever happened. But instead she sat there, holding back tears, too afraid to say anything. She could feel the weight of everyone's judgment, the laughter that seemed to hang in the air, even though no one was laughing aloud. But it felt like they were all laughing at her failure. Professor Leonard wasn't done. "This is a master class. You're here to learn, but that means you need to be willing to open up. I'm sorry, but this performance isn't even close to what I expected." I'll have to ask you to step aside." She nodded, too ashamed to speak. The room felt like it was closing in on her. As she gathered her things, she heard the murmurs, the whispers that felt louder than ever before. "She's not ready for this," someone said. "She doesn't have it." Her heart sank, but she forced herself to walk out of the room, trying to hold her head up. She could feel the stares, the judgment, and it hurt more than anything. Outside the building, the world felt distant. She found a quiet corner and sank to the ground, her back against the wall. She felt small, like a shadow of the person she had wanted to be. Her hands shook as she wiped her face, not wanting to let anyone see how much the experience had torn her apart. Her dreams felt crushed in that moment. She had tried so hard and it hadn't been enough. She had let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could do something great. But now, it felt like everything she had worked for was pointless. It was the first time she had ever seriously thought about quitting. She didn't tell anyone what had happened. She didn't want to explain. How could she? How could she put into words the feeling of being torn apart by someone she had admired? How could she explain that her love for music was suddenly drowned out by doubt? For days after that master class, she didn't touch the piano. It just sat there in the corner of her room, silently mocking her. The thought of playing felt like a weight she couldn't lift. Her fingers had forgotten the joy of playing, replaced by a suffocating sense of failure. What was the point of continuing if she could never be good enough? But something inside her stirred, something small but persistent. She knew she couldn't give up, not yet. She had to find a way back to the music that had once made her feel alive. As the days turned into weeks, the piano continued to sit in the corner of her room, but a part of her longed to play again. She wasn't ready yet, but she knew she had to find a way forward. She just didn't know how. At night, when the house was quiet and everyone else was asleep, she would sit in front of the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she knew she couldn't stay stuck in the past. Something had to change, and that change would come. But not yet. Not until she could find the courage to try again. To be continued. The days after the masterclass felt heavy and slow, like time itself had decided to move against her. Every morning, she woke up with the same tight feeling in her chest. It was there before her eyes even opened. It followed her through the day, quiet but constant. Like a shadow she could not shake. The memory of that room stayed with her. The hard chairs, the cold lights, the voice that stopped her music mid-note, the silence that came after. The kind of silence that makes you feel small. It followed her everywhere. To school, to meals, even into her dreams. Sometimes she dreamed she was playing again, only to wake up just before the sound could finish. She tried to distract herself. She watched shows. She scrolled on her phone. She talked when others talked. She smiled when she was supposed to. But nothing worked for long. The feeling always came back. The piano in her room stayed silent. At first, she avoided it on purpose. She walked past it without looking at it, as if it were a stranger she didn't trust. She closed her bedroom door more often. She stayed busy just to avoid being alone with it, but silence has a strange way of speaking. After a while, the quiet became louder than any music she had ever played. The piano was no longer mocking her. It wasn't judging her. It was simply there, waiting, patient, like it always had been. Some nights, she sat on her bed and stared at it from across the room. The shape of it in the dark felt familiar and painful at the same time. She remembered how it once felt to press a key and feel the sound move through her body. How a single note could change her mood. How music once made her feel understood. She missed that feeling more than she wanted to admit. Still, she didn't play. She told herself she was done. That she had tried and failed. That maybe music was meant for other people. People who were stronger, braver, more confident. People who didn't freeze when eyes were on them. She repeated those thoughts so often that they started to sound true. But deep inside, a small voice refused to disappear. It didn't shout. It didn't argue. It just whispered during the quiet moments. Late at night. Early in the morning. When no one else was around, it asked simple questions. Why does your heart still hurt when you hear music? Why do your fingers still move in the air like they're searching for keys? If music was truly over, why did her hands still ache to move? One late evening, when the house was dark and still, she finally sat on the piano bench. She didn't plan it. It just happened. She didn't turn on the light. She didn't open any music sheets. She didn't even straighten her back the way she used to. She just sat there. She breathed slowly, in, out. Her fingers rested on the keys without pressing them. The keys felt cool under her skin. She wasn't trying to be good. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just tired. Tired of holding everything inside. Tired of pretending she was fine. Tired of being afraid of something she loved. Her fingers moved before her mind could stop them. One note, then another, soft, careful, almost unsure. The sound was simple, almost fragile. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. There was no plan, no goal, no fear of mistakes. When a note came out wrong, she didn't stop. She didn't apologize to herself. She let it be part of the moment. Something shifted. For the first time since the master class, her shoulders relaxed. She didn't even realize how tense she had been until that tension slowly faded away. Her breath became steady, deep, calm. The music didn't feel like a test anymore. It didn't feel like something she had to pass. It felt like a conversation. Each note answered a feeling she had been holding back. Sadness found a sound. Anger found a rhythm. Hope, quiet but strong, found its way into the melody. The piano didn't judge her feelings. It accepted all of them. She played until her fingers felt tired. Not sore, just gently tired. When she stopped, the room stayed quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet. She didn't feel broken. She felt calm. That night, she slept deeply. The kind of sleep she hadn't had in weeks. From that moment on, she returned to the piano every evening. Not to practice pieces from books. Not to fix mistakes. Not to impress anyone. She played what she felt. Some days the music was slow and quiet, like a soft breath. Other days it was stronger, fuller, almost brave. Some nights she played only a few notes. Other nights she lost track of time. She didn't judge it. She didn't label it as good or bad. She listened. Little by little, something inside her began to grow again. Not the loud kind of confidence that demands attention. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need approval. The kind that comes from knowing who you are when no one is watching. Weeks passed. One afternoon, while walking through town, she noticed a small poster pinned to a board outside a community hall. It was slightly crooked, like it had been there for a while. The paper was simple. Black text. No big promises. A local music evening. Open stage. All are welcome. Nothing fancy. No big prizes. Just a simple stage, a piano, and an audience made of neighbors and people who loved music. She stood there for a long time. Her heart beat faster. The old fears tried to return. The tight chest. The shaking hands. The memory of being stopped mid-song. But this time, those fears didn't take control. She didn't think about the famous pianist. She didn't think about judgment. She thought about those quiet nights in the dark. About playing when no one was listening. About how music had found her again when she needed it most, before she could talk herself out of it. She signed up. The day of the event arrived. Sooner than she expected. The hall was warm and softly lit. The lights weren't harsh. The air felt friendly. People chatted quietly, smiling, holding simple programs. Some looked nervous. Some looked excited. There was no pressure in the air. Just curiosity. Still, when her turn came, her hands shook. She sat at the piano and closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't look at the audience. She didn't search for faces. She focused on her breathing. She remembered why she was there. Not to be perfect. Not to win. Not to prove anything. Just to share something real. She began to play. The first notes filled the room, gentle and clear. The audience slowly grew quiet. Chairs stopped moving. Whispers faded. The music wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It didn't rush. It moved at its own pace, like a story being told, one feeling at a time. she played the song she had created during those quiet nights. The song that came from pain, from doubt, from healing. Every note meant something to her. And somehow, without effort, that meaning reached the people listening. Some leaned forward. Some closed their eyes. Some simply listened. No one spoke. When the last note faded, there was a pause. A deep pause, the kind that feels full, not empty. Then the room filled with applause, not loud. Not wild. Warm. The kind that feels like understanding. Her eyes filled with tears. But she smiled. She didn't win anything that night. No awards, no titles. But as she stepped off the stage, she felt lighter than she had in years. She had done it. She had played without fear. Later that evening, as people slowly left the hall, someone approached her. It was the same pianist from the master class. He had been invited as a guest. She hadn't known he would be there. For a moment, her heart dropped, but when he spoke, his voice was different, softer. "I remember you," he said. "From the class." She nodded, unsure, careful. "I was hard on you," he said after a pause. "Too hard." She stayed quiet. "What you played tonight," he continued. "That was real music. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You weren't hiding. That takes courage." Something loosened inside her chest. "I learned something tonight," he added. "And I hope you did too." She looked at him and finally spoke. "I learned that I don't need permission to feel my music." He smiled. They parted ways shortly after. Stood alone for a moment and looked back at the empty stage. The piano sat there quietly, just as it always had, but everything was different now. In the days that followed, she continued to play. Not because she was chasing success, not because she wanted approval, but because music had become part of her again. She played for small groups, sometimes only for herself. Each time she felt stronger. She understood something important now. Growth doesn't always come from praise. Sometimes it comes from pain, from being misunderstood, from choosing to stand up again when it would be easier to stop. The laughter that once broke her no longer had power over her. It was part of her story now, not the end of it, and every time her fingers touched the keys, she remembered this truth: one honest song can change everything.